Warning, listening to the PM-Pro show may cause sudden clarity in leadership and project management, plus side effects like higher pay, smoother transitions, better teamwork, and dangerously efficient results. I'm Tim Dalhouse, retired U.S. Marine and founder of PM-ProLearn, where we bridge the gap between the battlefield and the boardroom. Each episode delivers battle-tested strategies for success to help you lead, transition, and train like a pro. Welcome to the PM-Pro show. Gear up with us to suck less and win more.
Hello, everyone. Welcome today. Really excited to be doing a webinar with a friend now at this point, Everette Jackson, who is the state approving agency right now in Maryland for all things GI Bill related. Also with me today, we got Tim Dalhouse, the CEO and founder of PM-ProLearn. And just really, again, glad to talk about this fairly new in military terms. The fact that the GI Bill under, post 9/11 GI Bill under what's called Chapter 33 funding can now be used to pay for licensing and certification prep, right? I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there as far as what can be used, how do we do it? So in order to squash all the rumors and wonderful good idea fairies, glad to have you here, Everette, to talk about this great program and how it can be used so that, when our students or other students are going through this process, they can know how to advocate for themselves and really take advantage of the benefit. So really, thank you, Everette, for being here today.
Sure. Thank you, Josh. So formally, I am the Associate Director of Veterans Affairs with the Maryland Higher Education Commission, which is the post-secondary education authority here in the state of Maryland. And within my unit, the Veterans Affairs unit, we serve as the state approving agency, which is the authority responsible for approving participation in the GI Bill education program. And through that role, it is appointed by a governor or our governor for the state of Maryland, where that state agency is located. And every state generally has a state approving agency. It's a state right to serve in that role. However, in the absence of state representation, the VA can serve as the acting SAA, and we serve in kind of a federal-state partnership through a cooperative agreement to do this work and make these programs available on the state level for our veterans and their families.
So that's super interesting. I just had a comment or a question. I always thought, I knew what an SAA was. I thought it was part of the VA, but you're actually not part of the VA, right?
That is correct. We're kind of like special state contractors working with the VA. So not officially employees with the VA. We work together cooperatively. And the VA will always say like the SAA is the approver, the VA is the payer. So that's really kind of the relationship between the two as it kind of comes to these different programs that we approve.
Yeah, that's an important distinction. And I appreciate clarifying that because I didn't know that.
Absolutely. The National Guard versus the DOD, right? Like you work for the governor, but you're connected and related. That does clarify something. I know we've talked long and hard about vocational rehabilitation and other things that you guys are essentially approving our program, but then the national office, the Veteran Affairs Office is the one that ultimately has to make that payment. And that's why there are sometimes difficulties going, I have direct contact with you, but I don't have direct contact with the VA, and trying to find out who that belly button is to push. So I guess with that on, just so that veterans can understand if they're listening to this or watching this, how is the VA structured in terms of benefits and educational benefit? Can you describe that? Because I know there's counselors, there's regions. Like, how does that structure work from the veteran point of view as it relates to the VA versus you on the educational side?
Sure. Right. So there's the VA is huge, right? And I think their biggest function is definitely on their like the VHA, the veteran health side. But when it comes to education benefits, that falls under the Veterans Benefits Administration, and we are kind of organized within 4 regions, but there's 2 processing offices that kind of process these benefits where veterans claims examiners are located. These are the people that will receive your claim and process them. I will say that with a lot of the digital GI Bill work, a lot of claims are now automated as far as that processing process, but sometimes these claims, even your initial application for GI Bill approval, it will go through your respective processing office, which one is in Muskogee, Oklahoma. The other is in Buffalo, New York. In Maryland, we closely work with the Buffalo Regional Processing Office. There, they have a chief education liaison officer on the education side that is kind of responsible for a breakdown of education supervisor, education liaison representatives, and then education liaison representative. That's who my office works closely with on the program approval side of things, as far as sending the approval to the VA, processing it, and getting into the VA system. On the payment side, in contrast, that's going to be our veteran claims examiners who are reviewing the claim that comes in the respects of cert prep or license and certification reimbursement. It's going to be a reimbursement form that you send in, usually with non-college degree schools or colleges and universities. There's an enrollment certification process that must be done by the school to initiate, which is a little different, in order to kind of trigger that payment based on the type of benefits that you're using. But as you mentioned, the VA has various programs that veterans can take advantage of and their dependents. And two big distinctions is that the SAA, kind of our approval process, is closely connected to the GI Bill benefits, which is tied as an education entitlement. However, there's another program, VRNE as well, that does provide rehabilitation to veterans. And that path can go many different ways, depending on the veteran's need and the assessment by the counselor. So sometimes that rehabilitation involves education. And so VRNE utilizes the SA approval to make a determination on what already vetted programs the veteran can take advantage of in order to use with VRNE. And then they have a wealth of other resources, right, that they can provide veterans with. And also how they pay, right, is different as well. They would not do a reimbursement form like our educational entitlement folks are doing in order to seek reimbursement. That kind of payment or reimbursement is done with their counselor, usually through the organization that they're working with.
Oh yeah, VRNE, and I've had a couple of counselors tell me vocational rehabilitation is just that. It's a vocational program to help you get a job. Sometimes that requires education and upskilling. Sometimes it does not. So I do think there's a misconception that voc rehab is an educational benefit. Voc rehab has an educational component, but it's really unique to the needs of the veteran. So for those that are looking at it, I have talked to some counselors. They say if college and certs are a part of the pathway you need to get a job that will not exacerbate your current disability, make sure you talk about both at the same time, right? Don't get a college or a non-college degree program started and then at the end be like, oh, wait, I wanted the cert too. So just a quick plug on that one. Make sure you understand the entire pathway you want if you're going down the voc rehab road. But shifting back to this licensing and certification prep versus non-college degree stuff, you kind of mentioned a little bit of both. What are those distinguishable programs? What are the differences? And then what does a veteran need to do to take advantage of the different programs?
Sure. So when we talk about licensure, certification exams, or tests, we're talking about either state recognized certifications like the bar exam or the NCLEX that nurses must take, right? That are kind of state regulated exams. Or there's also certifications that are industry kind of recognized certifications that will qualify you for a vocation. And so in that regard, we approve various organizations located within our state that offer some type of certification exam. A big one here in Maryland would be SANS Institute. They have a ton of GAC certifications that we approve here in Maryland for reimbursement that they offer that is recognized throughout the industry. And we evaluate that in the approval process to determine like what entities recognize this exam. Is this worthwhile to the veteran or dependent as far as utilizing it for their benefit? Non-college degree programs, these are typically longer programs that you're looking to learn the skill itself. It can lead to certification. So for example, with nursing, you could go do an associate's nursing program at a community college, and then you would need to take your state exam to pay for that program as a community college program, be reimbursed. But also separately, when you take that nursing exam, you have another benefit opportunity to be reimbursed for that exam as well. So sometimes I think veterans and dependents think they can only use their benefit in one pathway, but there's multiple pathways, or if it connects, you can use it through another path to utilize your benefit the best way that you can. Sends to other avenues such as on-the-job training and apprenticeship as well.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the distinction between prep and test. And I hope we get some counselors that choose to watch this video that are out there, because I think that's a big distinction. I know back in 2021, the VA through Chapter 33 authorized this separate, which is funding reimbursement to the individual for a preparatory course that allows you to obtain a GI Bill authorized license or certification, as well as you mentioned reimbursement for the fees relative to the test, right? So let's talk specifically about the distinction of, what does it take, or what is the benefit as it relates to a prep course, rules and regulations there. Once you're done, I'm actually going to pull up and walk through a demo here on how to find out stuff and this information on the VA website. And then let's talk about the exam reimbursement piece separately, because I think that's still really confusing, not only for the veterans, but also for the counselors that are trying to process the claims.
Sure. So I'll start with the exam piece because it existed first, right? So for the longest, veterans and their dependents could seek reimbursement for the test or exam fee related to a certification. So essentially you would, and let's use the bar exam for an example, you sit for the bar exam, you pay for it, whether you pass or fail, you can submit for reimbursement to the VA for taking that exam. And it will exhaust some of your entitlement. And you can do that, as many times as you need, as you have benefit available. The cert prep approval path back in 2021, that approval path is restricted to 2 types of benefits. So that's another distinction for the exam reimbursement and test reimbursement. You can use any of the educational benefits, which includes Chapter 30, which is Montgomery GI Bill, Chapter 1606, which is the reserves benefit, Chapter 35, which is our dependent and survivor benefit, and then, of course, Chapter 33, which is the most common and popular post 9/11 GI Bill benefit. However, with cert prep approval, it is limited to Chapter 33, post 9/11, and Chapter 35, which is the dependent and survivor benefit. Typically, if you may ask, well, why is it limited in that way? Well, sometimes when legislators are thinking about legislation, they think about costs, and sometimes if they limit it to a certain benefit, the cost of the legislation, how to pay it out in the long run, that may be why they determine on which benefits may be eligible for it. In regard to not expanding it. So, kind of that difference between the two. But between both, essentially, it's a reimbursement benefit that you'll make the cost upfront and the VA will reimburse you. So that's similar between the two. But also for the prep course, we cannot approve a prep course if it is not tied to an approved certification exam or test or licensure exam or test. And that training provider must be recognized by that certification exam or test owner as an approved training provider to prepare you, to take that certification exam or test. There's no limitation on the type of, the modality that it's offered in. Sometimes you'll see in non-college degree spaces, those programs have to be face-to-face resident, but with cert prep, it can be in person, it can be online. As far as how you take the training, it just needs to be synchronous training. And essentially with the cert prep, there's a different form that you have to fill out in regard to receive reimbursement versus when you're doing your exam reimbursement. And for any veteran taking advantage of that opportunity, you should be taking advantage of getting reimbursed for your cert prep program course first. And then when you take the exam, you should seek reimbursement for your exam costs as well. It's intended to be available for both.
Got it. Now, I know there's differences. You mentioned having to complete the exam, pass or fail in order to get reimbursed. Do you have to complete the training program before you can submit for reimbursement? Because I know the test is usually a quick, pay to flash to bang is pretty fast, but some programs can be, months long in terms of test prep. What are the distinctions there between those two processes?
Sure. So you do have to complete the training first in order to be reimbursed for the exam. Essentially, it's not designed to reimburse you so that you can use it to recoup and kind of pay for it while you're in training. So it's more of a reimbursement, and that's keyword reimbursement reimbursement benefit in order for you to use that. It also is to make sure that you finish and complete the training. If the VA was to reimburse you prior to completing the training, and let's say you don't finish the program or you withdraw for any reason, there's no really tracking mechanism in that regard with a reimbursement program. Unlike with our colleges and universities, you have to submit the enrollment, and the organization or the school has to submit updates to the changes in enrollment.
From my recollection, when I used GI Bill to attend some college classes, the VA pays the school directly, and it's not a reimbursement program. But we're talking about if you're going for a test prep and then a certification exam, it's a reimbursement where the veteran has to pay money up front out of their pocket and go to the VA and get paid afterwards. Why is that? Do you know?
Sure. So I'll say two things. So it depends on your benefit. So for college and university, it's not always a tuition benefit. Actually, the only benefit that provides a tuition payment to the college or university is post 9/11 GI Bill. So that's the only tuition payment benefit. If you are using Chapter 35 or Chapter 30, you are expected to kind of pay your tuition and fees up front, and you receive a monthly stipend throughout. Specifically with cert prep and exam and test reimbursement, you're right, that is designated as a reimbursement benefit itself. So it kind of changes between, are we talking about the approval path or reimbursement path that you can use it for versus also what kind of benefit you have. But as far as why, that I can't necessarily speak to. I think it was just the thought of Congress to make it a reimbursement benefit. And as I mentioned before, sometimes it's a matter of thinking about the cost associated with it, and also maybe the interest or popularity there of, should we cover this in full? Will, is this something easier to cover on your own and then be reimbursed for it versus paying for a full cost of a program versus a prep course for a certification or exam.
Okay, thank you.
So I know on the VA forms, you have the VA 0803 form, which is the reimbursement for test fees, which does say you must attempt a test and show proof of result. But I know on the VA, the 10272 form, which we'll log in and look at, it says upon proof of enrollment, not proof of completion. Because I know that is one of the issues in clarity on the VA websites right now. Which is the policy?
Sure. So you have to complete the exam, or you have to complete the course before being reimbursed. Now, I want to say I do not represent the Department of Veterans Affairs, and I represent the state umbrella and the state approving agency. However, as far as the form, the 10272 that you fill out for the cert prep reimbursed, some keywords on there. So enrollment verification. This is what they ask the veteran to provide, that the organizations that approve should provide to the veteran. In the environment of enrollment, we're not really talking about registration as evidence. They want to see that enrollment is kind of defined as active participation, showing proof that you actively participated in the course. But however, the other reason why VA is interpreting that as completion of the course as what they need, because of that concern that a veteran, if they got reimbursed before actually taking the course, they could have stopped or not completed the course and would have received reimbursement without actually completing it.
Got it. So guys, I want to do a little bit of a screen share with everybody right now to kind of walk through, how do you figure out what programs are approved? Thankfully, the VA has actually made a school search tool for certs. The big problem with it is that you can't search by school name. So one of the big things, if veterans are out there trying to figure out, how do I find certifications that I'm allowed to use my benefits to take? Start point is just Google search GI Bill certifications, right? If you do a Google search for GI Bill certifications, this is going to be the first link that's going to come up and talks about licensing and certification tests and prep courses. Really glad that this is now listed on the VA's website. Again, walking through it, to your point, Everette, licensing and tests come up front. If you want to learn how to pay for the benefits, you can do that here. How many tests can get paid back for, right? As many, as long as you still have benefits. To your point, I appreciate you said you don't have to pass it in order to be reimbursed. I think it's a big point to cover. And then down a little bit farther, you see it actually does pay for test prep, right? Preparatory courses towards licensing and certification. If you want that form, the VA 10272, you can click here to download it, right? I'll go ahead and download it. If you want, click here, hit download PDF. and it will then download the form for you. Now, for our students with PM-ProLearn, we're going to send this to you already filled out. If you guys are curious and want to use this for reimbursement, again, it's first name, address, phone number, which test you're trying to take. So it'd be Project Management Professional or Lean Six Sigma or Agile, or a number of our courses are already approved. Who you went through, what was the organization's name, and then verification of enrollment, right? We have had counselors actually approving people with a screenshot that shows their enrollment into our program. And that's where, again, the VA, even though the website isn't clear on, do I have to finish it or not? So counselors have been approving this. The one issue we've had with counselors, though, is they say, show me the test, right? Until you pass the test, I'm not going to reimburse your training. And I think that's one of the biggest issues we've had with veterans trying to get reimbursed for training is they say, show me you've passed the exam. So they're treating cert prep like exam reimbursement. I think that's really, it's not accurate. And I'm hoping counselors, again, don't do that anymore. But it does say proof of enrollment for the course here.
Josh, are you, so that the question that brings up to my mind is if a veteran takes a prep training course and then takes the exam and fails the exam, are they in danger of no reimbursement at all because they didn't pass the exam?
No, I think passing the exam is not required. So it's really two reimbursements. There's two different forms. So a veteran should be able to enroll in a preparatory course and be fully reimbursed for the fees of the prep course. Then if they have to go pay separately for that exam, they should be able to submit the VA 0803 form and be reimbursed for the test fees, completely separate. They're two distinct payments, two distinct forms, two distinct processes. Now, I know for our students, we include the exam free with their educational enrollment. So there's no added fee just in case. It's just a freebie that comes with it because we didn't want them to have to process two different payments and pay out of pocket different times. It's kind of a one and done program. Now, I do want to highlight, and Everett, you can validate this. It is limited up to $2,000, right? The reimbursement of preparatory course or the reimbursement of an exam fee is limited to $2,000, okay? So we're going to highlight that because I'm going to show you some other schools who decided they want to charge $9,000 for a prep course, okay? They are listed that way in the WEAMS database and the WEAMS system. So anyways, I'm going to back up here a little bit more because this is a very useful website. It does talk about how do you get paid back for courses, right? Fill out the reimbursement of a prep course, and then you submit it in one of two ways. The quick submit button right here is phenomenal, right? The VA online quick submit is an amazing quick resource if you want to use it. You will upload, again, that proof of enrollment, your receipt that says I paid for it, and then the VA 10272 form. It's really the three-step process that you have to upload, and then it's about a 2-week turnaround we've seen from the VA to process the claim to get paid back. So it's exceptionally fast. It's been really quick unless the counselor doesn't understand what's supposed to be reimbursed, and then they flag it, and then it takes a long time, and we have to call them and educate them. But for those that are doing it, it's a very quick process. But first, gotcha, make sure that the program you're using is actually authorized in WEAMS. Right, to your point, just because the test is approved and prep courses can be approved doesn't mean that everybody's approved, okay? So if the company you're trying to use is not already in WEAMS as an authorized trainer, you cannot be reimbursed, okay? This was our big, long process working with Everett and the team to actually get listed as an authorized trainer. So how can you figure out which programs are even used, right? That's part of the struggle a little bit, okay? You can go Google search WEAMS credentialing, right? Now, it's sad you have to actually go Google these things to find it, but you can Google WEAMS credentialing. And the other thing, though, which the VA did do is under the school comparison tool, when you finally click up the GI Bill comparison tools, you now have this link right here in the middle. It says licensing and certification prep courses. Okay, it's brand new. This is just added probably in the last week or two, like brand new in military terms. So you have schools, then you have this licensing certification prep courses, and then the tests, right? National tests. These are not cert tests, SAT, GRE, GMAT. Like these are national entrance exam tests that can be funded. Okay, so we'll click on here, licensing and certifications. Okay, this will mirror the WEAMS website, which is over here, licensing and certification name. Notice it's very simple, licensing and certification category. So it has license, certification, or a prep course. Okay. In this case, we're going to search prep courses. And then if I want to find one, I'm going to type like Lean 6. I'll type Lean 6 and see what pops up. Actually says no results. So I have to type Lean. Actually, our Lean isn't even authorized here yet, although it's in WEAMS, it hasn't made it onto this database, right? So it shows you, although the website exists, data exchange is not quite correct. So instead, we'll do project management. Okay, so we type project management. Notice it says there are 5 results, one in Texas, one in Florida, one in Maryland, you have Idaho, and then Montana. right? So let's click on Texas and see which one that is. They'll tell you the location, but they're charging $3,000 for their prep course. Right? Again, we've highlighted it only covers $2,000. So if you choose to go with a trainer charging more than $2,000, it's not going to reimburse the entire amount. All right. So
But you can get partial reimbursement.
You'll get a partial reimbursement, right?
Okay.
It will reimburse up to $2,000. And in this case, this one's charging $3,000. Okay. So Maryland on ours, right? And we just lowered our pricing. Actually, we've got to get this updated down to $2,000 flat because of credentialing. But notice for us, it has CAPM, PMP, and Agile all listed here as covered. Okay. So this is our company. If you want to use it, this just says we are an authorized program. So you can then use the GI Bill to be fully reimbursed for our training. So veterans will never come out of pocket more than they are fully reimbursed for our certification courses. All right. The other place is WEAMS. I mentioned WEAMS credentialing. Okay. If you Google search WEAMS credentialing, it will come up with this site. Okay. This is the official repository of authorized schools. Okay. If anyone wants to search this, you can. I would type both here. And again, we can type project management, or I'll do Lean Six Sigma. All right. Let's find what programs are funded for Lean Six Sigma. Hit submit. You notice there are 3. Now, one of these is not quite accurate because it should say prep course over here, but the systems again are legacy systems that are working. So you have black belt, green belt, and then green belt. I think this bottom one is us. Nope, that's the exam. You can see that the exam for 390. And then here you see test prep, right? So Lean Six Sigma green belt. This is our prep course, and you can find then our institutional profile here is PM-ProLearn. We are the only Lean Six Sigma trainer authorized in the VA database for our Greenbelt program. But again, you can't search us by a school name, which is part of the frustration. You can only search by the exams. So if you were trying to find a prep course, you have to search for the exam you're looking for, not the school. I'm hoping that they change this in the future, but right now that's just the way it is. Thankfully, they have built that school search program on their website. That's brand new. But even there, you still have to be careful to search for the credential you want, then find a prep course that's authorized. So make sure they're approved before you think you're getting paid back, or it will not pay you back. They will deny your claim ahead of time. Last week, so how much? I know it covers up to $2,000, and I know it's a prorated amount. If the test costs less than that, it's only $500. Obviously, it's not taking a full month of benefits. How much does 1 month of benefits count towards in terms of dollar figure, if you know that answer? And how much of that month is $2,000? Now, I think I know the answer of how much on the monthly cost side. I know the days calculator because our students have told us. But how does that break down? Because it's not college. It's not like I'm using a month of my GI Bill or 3 months of my GI Bill to go to school for 3 months. Do you know how it breaks down?
Yeah, so that one I'm not as much familiar with as far as the breakdown. It does kind of get convoluted with how VA breaks down the days and also the amount of the course that could vary. Generally, I mean, depending how you're using your benefits to kind of make that determination, like, is it best used to use it for a certification, or like, am I planning to go to school? Like, how do you want to best use your benefits? Because they are given in months, right? You're usually given 36 months of entitlement, not necessarily tied to a dollar value, but the way that they exhaust it is tied to the expenses, I guess, associated with what you're being reimbursed for. So I can't speak exactly to how they break it down. And maybe for a future webinar, I mean, I think we could probably get one of
a counselor to come in.
My counterparts, on the other side to kind of speak to that, to kind of give a better insight on the payment process.
Yeah, so I did hear at least what I think I've been able to figure out, not doctrine, right, from a military word of like what it is in stone, but I believe every month equates to about $2,800 in benefit. And I do know a counselor, did tell us that the $2,000 reimbursement is 24 days of entitlement. So it took 24 days of 1 month to go through our program, right? So I do want to highlight that for people that are considering using this. Like, it's less than 1 month of benefits to earn an industry certification that can potentially yield you $10,000 to $20,000 a year more, right? So if you are currently on active thinking about upskilling and getting out and be like, hey, I want to get a job or I want to go to school, right? It is less than a month of your GI Bill to invest in yourself to earn a globally recognized cert, the project management professional or Lean Six Sigma, and be able to get a career that on average is paying $10,000 to $20,000 a year more than a non-certified professional. Okay. So
that's like a whole nother webinar that we definitely need to do about bang for your buck, right? Do I use my GI Bill to pay for college, or do I use it to pay for a certification, or maybe both, right? But really thinking about the bang for your buck, and literally it changes, right? So what's valued by the employers out there changes over time. So where is it currently at, and what's the best investment in your money? That's a great topic for another webinar. I don't know if
Let's do
Everett
that.
could weigh in on that one or not, but
No,
I certainly can from my personal experience.
it's definitely another webinar, and a lot of colleges now, especially some of the leading military colleges like AMU, Purdue Global, UMGC, are giving 6 to 12 master's credits for having a PMP cert, right? So if you look at, well, hey, I need to save this to go to college. No, actually, if you get the cert now, you will accelerate your future college, and
With
you will
credits.
save more than that month of benefits
Yeah,
by getting
incredible.
the cert now, right? If I can waive 2 master's courses and get 6 credits waived, how much, like what's the return back on that in terms of month of VA? And that's the hard part because it's a semester hour, not a month. But I will tell you, just based on quick calculations, like getting a cert now and being able to accelerate through a master's program will save you more than the month of benefits
Hmm.
in the long run, right? And I was a guy that transferred my kids. Thankfully, my unit paid for PMP, so I got certs before I left the Marine Corps. But even then, having not done that, if I'd have had the cert and say I get, $5 grand a year more, my kids were 4 years old when I left the Marine Corps. Well, that puts 14 years before they go to college. If I'm making 5 grand a year more before they go to college, that's a
Oh, incredible.
200x return on that investment by the
Yeah.
time they would have actually used my benefit. So, I think there's definitely another webinar on, should I use my GI Bill for me or give it to my kid, and having that discussion, because I think certs in the skills-based economy now, certs and licenses are more tangibly impactful on your future career. And colleges are now seeing that education is education, and being certified equals degree credit, right? And again, I think UMGC in Maryland is one of the leading pioneers of that. Purdue Global, American Military University are 3 of the leading pioneers. Now Norwich is doing it. Like there's more and more and more colleges are giving direct credit for certs.
Absolutely. Definitely the credit for experience space. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think our colleges and universities they're more cognizant of that experience, also knowing that their students who have that kind of practical experience are better prepared with adding the credential. So I definitely think it's a great relationship there. In respects to planning another webinar, I agree. I think it would be helpful to kind of outlining those pathways based on where you are, what are the best next steps for you. If you are seeking the credential, or you may already have the degree, but need the credential, what are those best pathways or options for you to best utilize your benefit? Or even on the active duty side, I know you all work with the COOL program, right? Also emphasizing, our active duty military to take advantage of those programs and resources while you're active duty, so that you do have more options or space with your GI Bill once you transition out of the military as well, whether you're using that for your children or something else that you want to do later in life.
Unfortunately, the Navy and the Marine Corps have a woefully inadequate COOL program. It only
The
covers,
Air Force and the Army, for
as
sure.
compared to the Air Force,
Yeah.
Army, and Coast Guard, I'll have a much better COOL program.
Okay.
Navy and Marine Corps only pay for, like the GI Bill did early, the exam itself. They don't actually pay for any prep courses whatsoever, where all the other programs pay for prep courses. Officers can't use COOL in the Air Force, but they could use the GI Bill. So we're really trying to highlight that. Like officers already have their bachelor's degree. If they wanted to use it for a master's, having a cert accelerates the master's. If you're thinking about giving it to your kids, like officers still have the same credibility gap that enlisted do when they leave the military, right? Certs are a great way to invest in yourself. Quickly, whether it's unit funding or the GI Bill on active duty, just want to highlight, you don't have to be a veteran to use your GI Bill either. And it's another major on active duty, and you can use that benefit to be reimbursed now. So don't wait until the end to invest in yourself. Get it 2, 3, 5 years before you get out, so you have used it ahead of time.
Yeah, so the requirement's 90 days, right? 90 days of active duty, and then you can actually use your GI Bill even while you're on active duty.
Correct. So last question ever. This new ruling on Montgomery GI Bill extension relative to post 9/11, right? It just came out where those that transferred Montgomery GI Bill to post 9/11 on active duty can now get this up to 12-month extension. If they get that extension, is that chapter 30 or is that chapter 33?
So I think we're talking about the Riddle decision.
Yes.
So I will say, I think the VA is still very much figuring that out in regard to how to implement those claims. But I would say it probably would depend on which benefit the veteran elected to give up. In my opinion, looking at kind of what happened with that, because it told them that they had to give up one and use it and use the other. So I think it
assume they gave up
Yeah.
Montgomery, right? Most of the people I've talked to right now, they had Montgomery, then 9/11 came out. They had to give up Montgomery that they'd paid into in order to be able to claim 9/11, right? If that was the case, does the conversion add to the 9/11 benefit? Does it become Chapter 33? Because on the certification prep side, that's a big, it's a big distinction, because can they use that to pay for test prep is why I'm asking. Can somebody under the Ridisto decision who got an extension use that extension to pay for test prep?
It would depend on what the months are added to. If it's added to post 9/11, then they would. But yeah, if they're given an extension to their Montgomery jail bill benefits, then they would not be eligible for the cert prep part. I'm not sure. So if they filed a claim, right, they should get a determination back from the VA. And so I would contact the GI Bill. I'm sorry, I don't have it offhand. I would essentially contact the VA to inquire about the status of their claim, to determine what they're going to be eligible for. And whatever it is, they're going to have a certificate of eligibility that's going to determine what those months are. They would need to receive an updated certificate of eligibility with their entitlement of what they're eligible for.
Does that populate on there? So I had some people say they logged in and all of a sudden they had 12 months. Is there a way for them to log into their benefits page with the VA to see how much GI Bill they have? Or is it only, okay.
Yes, no, they can log in and see what their entitlement is. They can print off a copy of their entitlement to see how many months that they have remaining. Absolutely.
And it will say by chapter type. It'll say like chapter 33, so many months. Okay.
Oh, right. If they've applied for it. So that's the other note, right? You have to apply for the benefit in order to use it. So yeah, if they've submitted an application for benefits, it will tell them their entitlement, how much they have remaining.
Awesome. I know it's one thing that's come up, and like, hey, I fell under this decision. How much do I have left? I'm like, you got to log in and look. I'm not sure. I haven't been able to have anybody tell me, like, did it show up as Montgomery extension or chapter 33? Because I don't have that. I'm too young. Montgomery didn't exist when I joined the service, unlike Tim, who did have that benefit. So, I think that's one of the things out there. So again, if you're uncertain, ask the VA. Again, if you're listening to this, go ask the VA, log into your e-benefits page, your VA portal under education, and it should be able to show up and says you have so much entitlement left. Before you expect to be reimbursed, make sure you check with the VA. Is this a Chapter 33 benefit, or is it still under Chapter 30? Because, thank you for the clarity that Chapter 30 does not cover test reimbursement or test prep reimbursement. It only covers exam reimbursement. Anyways, Everette, that's all I got, man. This has been super, super beneficial today. I really, really appreciate it. To the people out there, again, if you want to reach out to us, if you're listening, you can email me training@pm-prolearn.com. Get with one of our folks, or go to our website, www.pm-prolearn.com, and click request information, and we would love to connect with you. 4 of our programs, again, CAPM, PMP, Agile, and Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, are all approved. We are the only company to have access to all of those certs right now. We are the only approved training provider in Maryland, yet, period, underneath this program, thankfully to the efforts of Everette and my tenacity of not quitting for years. But thank you today. This is great. I'd love to set up another webinar with one of the counselors. If you have a coworker that's very familiar with this stuff, bring him in. That'd be great to set up a next episode on how to get reimbursed.
Sounds good. Thank you both so much.
Thank you very much, Everette. I really appreciate it. And you can also just look us up on LinkedIn and connect with us there too.